Good morning. Welcome to the first Sunday in 2024. And you're doing a great job already by getting up, coming to service. Nice work. Glad you're here. Today we get to talk about something that you're going to love. It's even better than that newest Netflix show that you're obsessed with or whatever your friend shared on TikTok or whatever it is. If you have a Bible, go ahead and turn to Matthew chapter 6, verse 16. You can find out for yourself what it is that you're going to love to talk about this morning. Matthew 6, verse 16. You see what is the topic there? Fast, yeah. Not a surprise. You just heard about fasting for the last 30 minutes. So, it's fasting is one of those things that I feel like as a church we love to avoid. I mean, when you hear about fasting, you're like, yes. I was waiting for the doctor to tell me that I had to stop eating for 24 hours. I was just looking for an excuse to not take that snack out of my drawer, right? I mean, no. Anyone whoever hears the word fasting, the immediate thought is just like, ugh. Everyone hates the idea of fasting with a passion. That's why Americans invented snacks, right? So we don't have to ever go without eating, right? So it's much easier to continue between meals, right? Fasting is that horrible thing that you may be forced to do at some time in your life because of a medical procedure, but otherwise you never, ever want to do it. And when you see the word fasting in the Bible, your brain automatically assumes, oh, this is something from way back then. This doesn't apply to me now. That's what we automatically assume, and don't worry, I'm with you. If there's one thing that's invisible in our Bibles, it's the word fasting, okay? I mean, there's a lot of words that we wish were invisible, but this one I feel like we do skip over quite easily, and we make lots of excuses for it, or we make it, oh, this doesn't apply to me, or not right now in this season of my life, or it's not your fault. It seems to be a cultural thing that seeped into the church in the West, specifically. Over the last 100 or so years, the American church specifically decided that we don't really need to do this fasting thing anymore. You see, we have brothers and sisters in the church over in the Middle East that are fasting regularly. It's a regular part of their walk with Jesus. Not just because they don't have food or something like that, but because they're choosing to, right? Same down in South America. We have brothers and sisters who are regularly fasting. It's a part of what they do to follow Jesus. But here in the USA, it's something we don't really talk about that often. There are a few churches that do, but hardly for the most of us. Because in America, I think we just love to eat. There's nothing more un-American than fasting, I feel like. So somehow that's bled into our churches, and most of us don't talk about fasting, don't practice biblical fasting, don't know what fasting is. We've replaced fasting with what Inyas just said, potlucking. If you're unfamiliar, if you've not been around the church, it's this thing we like to do where everyone brings a dish to share. I don't know where this word came from, but apparently it's like you're lucky if whatever you get out of the pot, I guess, okay? But potluck is where we have a shared meal together, and so that's what we love to do. We're like, oh, we'll have a potluck every Sunday, but not fasting. So I want to look at this verse right here, Matthew chapter 6, verse 16. This is Jesus talking. This is when he's giving his sermon, the largest sermon recorded in the Bible from Jesus. And he specifically talks about fasting. And he says, when you fast. Go ahead, read it out loud with me. When you fast. Let me just show you a couple other translations, just in case you think it's just that one. When you fast. The NLT, and when you fast, the ESV, and when you fast, the BSB, when you fast, or if you love the KJV, moreover, when ye fast. Okay? Sounds like it's the right wording. It's not. I don't see an if you fast in there. What does the Bible say? When. Right, by the way, this is Jesus talking. You can't be like, well, that was like Peter, okay? He didn't know he was like, this is Jesus talking. Jesus says, when you fast. What does that imply? That it's going to happen, right? Jesus assumed that part of following him included fasting. He didn't give any like, if you happen to be fasting. He didn't say, when the really spiritual person decides to fast, right? Or he didn't say, only if you really want to. He says, when. He assumes it's something that the church and Christians, we will do or even are already doing. When you fast, when you do this, and then he starts to give you some instructions on how to do that, right? So I want to just open your minds a little bit and let you know that if you are saying, I want to follow Jesus, Jesus expects fasting to be a part of your life. And in case you think this is something specific just to like what Jesus was talking about in this, you're like, oh, the context, Galen, it's like this is specific, right? Throughout the whole Bible, fasting is a constant part of people's relationships with God. In the Old Testament, constantly the Jewish people were fasting to seek God closer, to maybe get some help out of some crazy circumstances, to ask for a specific word from God. And then Moses, great old Moses, he fasted for 40 days. Twice, yeah, in order to seek God, right? Jesus himself fasted for 40 days. We're going to look at that in just a second. The early apostles in the church, right after Jesus came back to life, he goes to heaven, he leaves the church. It says the early church was fasting all the time to hear from God, to seek God. And then throughout history, the church has regularly fasted all the way up to today. Honestly, it's only in the West in the last 100 years where we've decided we don't really want to follow this scripture, which is interesting if you study the history of it. But the people of God throughout history have understood that fasting is a normal part of walking with God. Now, does that mean it's easy or something that you love? No, there's a lot of things that God calls us to do that you don't want to do, that you don't love, right? Hey, that's part of dying to ourselves. That's part of what it means to give up your life in order to follow Jesus. So I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's something that you are excited about, but I am saying it's in the Bible that Jesus himself did it, and then he expects us to do it as well. I want you to know that God created you to need to fast in order to feel God's presence more. He created you that in order to hear God's voice clearer, you need to fast. That's the way he created you. The same way he created you to need breath, air to be able to breathe, right? Same way he created you to need relationships in order to function well. Same way he created you to need prayer in order to be spiritually alive. He created fasting as a part of how you can hear and draw close to God. Now, maybe this is part of why some of us feel distant from God, feel stuck, feel like we can't overcome that addiction that has held you captive for 10 years. The relationships in your family are so broken, and there's never a breakthrough. Sometimes we never really understand that we're missing the way God designed us to live, right? It's like all you do is eat candy, and you wonder why your blood pressure's so high, right? You go to the doctor, and they're like, what does your diet look like? You're like, well, Skittles and Snickers bars, and they're like, well, I think we have to solve this problem in order to solve this up here. A lot of the times we see all the issues in our life, but we don't want to go to the root and really address what God actually has given us to help us. Fasting, I just want to tell you, it's not like an optional add-on to your life. It's not like, oh, I want the upgrade, right? Like, I want to be the super spiritual person. Now, God assumes that this is something that all of us will do. He assumes that you don't have to be super spiritual in order to be fasting. It should be a part of just following him. It's an expectation that God has on you. And we're going to talk about why. And even if you may hate it, you may not like it, it doesn't change the reality. So, if Jesus expected us to be fasting, let's start simple. What is fasting? Here's a great definition that I found a couple years ago. Actually, another pastor at New Life gave this to me. I thought it was great. He said, fasting is giving up something that you love because you love Jesus more. Giving up something that you love because you love Jesus more. It's deciding to go without something that you could have so that you can fill that time and energy with Jesus instead. It's saying no to your flesh. Saying no to what you want, right? Our flesh, it's a part of us that wants. That's always our flesh is wanting something. And, here's the thing. When we think of fasting, we usually think of abstaining from food, right? Well, that is exactly what it is. So, sorry, you were expecting maybe something else. No, it's actually food, okay? You're like, thank God. No, right? No, biblically throughout the Bible, 99% of the time when you see the word fasting, it's talking about fasting from food, okay? Now, you can fast from something other than food. Of course you can. There's, some of us giving up social media would be more painful than starving. You'd be like, no, I'd rather not eat for 3 weeks, okay, than give up my Instagram. No, but fasting from social media, television, maybe going out to eat at restaurants, whatever it is, that's a great option, especially if you have a medical reason why fasting is more difficult, especially in certain ways. Why you can't abstain from some certain food, you can take certain medicines or things like that. So if you're unsure, talk to your doctor before engaging into fasting for sure. Make sure that you're not, I don't want you to come back 3 weeks from now almost dead and say, oh, Pastor Galen told me not to eat, No, make sure you're doing it. The thing is, fasting is not to harm our bodies. That's the key, right? We're not trying to harm or punish our bodies. That's important. But whether we like it or not, there's something intrinsically connected with food and fasting. It's something as humans that our connection to God somehow is interrelated with the way we relate with food. And at this moment, you're terrified because you're thinking there's no way I can go 21 days without eating, right? You're not even going to engage in this. But let me tell you, it looks completely different for each of us. Some of you may choose to do a water fast. That's where for 1 day a week, you just drink only water. 1 day a week for the next 3 weeks, you do 1 day of water. Maybe some of you will do a juice fast for every lunch. Every lunch, instead of eating lunch, you have a juice instead. Some of you may choose to do what's called a Daniel fast. Over the 21 days, all you eat is fruit, vegetables, and grains. It's from the Bible. That's why we call it Daniel fast. Some of you may skip 1 meal a day, or maybe 2 meals a day, maybe 1 meal every other day. Maybe you're going to fast from coffee and caffeine for the 21 days. I just heard everybody like, right? You're like, I'm not showing up on Sundays because you're going to get a very different me without coffee, right? So you're getting the picture. It doesn't mean it has to look the same for each of us. That's not what I'm telling you. And I think that's what, if you go on to read the rest of Matthew 6, that's what Jesus says. It's not about how you compare yourself to everyone else or how it looks. It's not to impress people or impress God, right? It's important. And if you're having trouble deciding, here's what I tell everyone. If you're comfortable with what you're going to fast with during these next 3 weeks, you probably need to go a step further. If you're saying like, this will be super easy, I'm just going to, not eat Cheetos for the next 3 weeks. And I'm like, maybe you could try a little bit harder, right? Like maybe, I don't know. I mean, if that is the most hardest, difficult thing for you, then God bless you, okay? But I think most of us should feel at least a little bit uncomfortable. If it feels comfortable, you should take a step further in what you're doing. Go a step beyond your comfort, not to harm yourself. That's not the goal, not to harm yourself, but it should feel uncomfortable. And that goes from fasting with other things besides food too. I actually encourage you to do both. Maybe it's like during these next 3 weeks, you're like, I'm not going to watch TV for 3 weeks. That could be really difficult. Or I'm going to sign out of all my social media accounts for 3 weeks in addition to what I'm fasting from food, right? So I want you to think about what you commit to during this next 20 minutes we have together here talking. And at the end, I'm going to ask you just to, between you and God, I'm not going to look at it or anything. I'm going to have you fill out a little card. And you're going to say, hey, this is what I want to commit to during the next 3 weeks to fast from. And we don't judge anyone based on what their fast looks like, different than ours. It's only between you and God. I want you to make sure that's clear during this whole time. It's really you and God. What is it that this fast would look like for you? And as you decide on all this, here's the important thing. Fasting isn't just giving up. It's then filling and overflowing your life with extra time with Jesus. That's why Inyas was sharing us all these things we're doing over the next 3 weeks. We got extra times where you can call in and pray as a group. We're going to have worship nights throughout the next couple weeks. If you're part of a life group, we're going to have some extra stuff there. It's to give extra space where we together get to worship and draw close. But it's more important even that you, on your own, that you're doing that. If you're skipping lunch, that doesn't mean it's like a time where you then just work extra. No, take that time and go for a prayer walk. Take that time and read or listen to the Bible for 20 minutes. Fill yourself with more of Jesus. Remember, fasting is giving up something you love because you love Jesus more. Am I dying on this? Come on. What's up? No? Can you use a mic? Huh? You can hear me? Coming out of the speakers? Oh. No? I'm just really loud, so comes and goes. We'll see. Oh. Hello? There we go. That's the difference. So, fasting, giving up something you love because you love Jesus more. Fasting is not a diet. It's not, a super quick shake meal so you can get some pounds off before the summer. That's not what fasting is. You're like thinking, oh, darn it, right? Or it's not a way to look super spiritual, to prove to everyone else how much of a good Christian you are. That's not what fasting is, which is going to backfire, by the way, when you get hangry and start cussing everyone out, okay? Because everyone's not going to think you're so spiritual anymore, right? And that's what happens. God's going to show you how spiritual you are. Fasting is not harming yourself in order to earn God's favor. That's also important. Fasting is not somehow you appease God by doing this. No, God already loves you. God already loves you despite whether you fast or not. He's calling you to enter into a deeper relationship with him. And fasting is not taking a break from something that is sinful. Some of us think, I'm going to fast from pornography for the next 21 days. No. That is already something that is sinful you should not be doing. Maybe you need to fast that God would break that addiction in your life, right? But you're not going to fast from stealing. I'm just not going to go and steal from the store anymore for 21 days. No, that's not fasting, okay? That's sinning, and you shouldn't be doing it anyways, right? So, finally, fasting is not taking a break from things you don't do regularly. Some of you are like, I'm going to fast from coffee. I'm like, well, you don't drink coffee. I know, it's so easy. Right? I'm going to fast from lunch. You never eat lunch. Well, yeah, it's great. I'm already fasting. No, let me tell you, God is going to answer this desire, if you actually give up something that you love and fill it with more of Jesus. Saying no to your flesh and filling it with more time with Jesus. Jesus is going to draw close to you, or even better, you are going to draw close to Jesus. That's what is the beauty of fasting. Whew. So that brings us to our series we're going to go through together over the next 3 weeks. It's called Stronger. Stronger. This is a series that's going to really dive deep into what fasting is, what it does to you. And here's a hint. It doesn't make you weaker. That's what you think. Right? The Bible actually says the opposite. It says that fasting makes you what? Right? Fasting makes you stronger. I'm not kidding you. Despite what everything in your body is going to tell you, despite how weak you are going to feel, the Bible says that when you decide not to eat and you fill that with prayer, you actually are getting stronger. It's very similar to a workout. And Yas was sharing, he was just like preaching my whole message today. These like workout sheets, right? Some of us, January 1st, we're like, I'm going to get healthy this year. So you go on, Instagram or whatever, and you find these like little workout sheets. Looks very similar to this. If you scroll through, you're probably seeing them right now. They got them all out. And it's like, oh, okay, 20 push-ups on day 1, right? And then 20 sit-ups on Tuesday. And it says all these things to do. And, you sign up for the gym membership, you go, and there's like 50,000 people in there because it's January, but you finally get to the machine, you try to lift the bar, and you can't, and you struggle with it for like 10 minutes, and everybody's looking at you, so you give up. You go over to the little dumbbell, and it's like 2.5 pounds, and you're like, right? It's like the weight of a banana, right? And you're just like barely getting it up. 20 reps, and you're dead. You go home, you fall asleep exhausted. But what happens the next day? Your body is hurting, your muscles are dying. You feel what? Sore, weaker. You're like, this thing doesn't work, right? I went and lifted the 2.5 pounds 20 times, and I'm weaker because of it. Well, what happens if you wait a couple days? What happens if you keep up with it? You get stronger. The next time you go to the gym, you can lift 3 pounds, right? And it slowly increases. If you don't know, that's how the science works, okay? You tear your muscles and they heal, and you get stronger. When you feel weaker, what's actually happening? Your body is actually getting stronger. It feels like you're getting weaker, so much so that your mind says, I don't want to ever do this again. But what's actually happening is you are getting stronger. You see, with fasting, it's the exact same. It doesn't feel good. You feel, that's the key word, the devil is going to whisper, you feel your feelings, you feel weaker. But as you engage, as you continue, if you're faithful throughout these next 21 days, you are going to get stronger. And how do I know? Besides having engaged in this fast for the last, 8 years. Corey, how many fasts have you done? You've been here long time. 70? Is it 70 fasts? Oh, okay. He's been here at least 10 years, so he's done it quite a while. And I've engaged, I've seen how God has made me stronger through this. But I believe even more so, the Bible has a lot of stories that tell us about fasting. And we're going to look at those over the next 3 weeks. We're going to look at a different story each week. But the first one I want to start out with is about our main guy, Jesus. So turn back a couple chapters if you're in Matthew. Matthew chapter 4. Jesus just got baptized. He's about to start actually doing public ministry, going around teaching, healing people, casting out demons. He just got baptized. That's where he's going. But something happens in between. Matthew 4, verse 1 says, Then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. Before Jesus even begins his ministry, he's led into the middle of nowhere by who? By the Holy Spirit, right? The Spirit of God to do what? To be tempted by the devil. When people say, like, I'm just following the Spirit, I've never heard someone say, like, the Spirit led me to be tempted by the devil. But apparently the Spirit does this, right? He led Jesus to be tempted by the devil. And Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to face the devil. The devil is the spiritual being who has led humanity astray since the beginning. He's actually the spirit behind evil in this world. Jesus calls him the father of lies. That means he's the one that has brought all the lies into this world. If Jesus is the word of truth, Satan is the father of lies. And this being, since the beginning, has been trying to do everything he can to stop Jesus from actually being present in our lives. He's been doing everything he can to corrupt what Jesus has created and is sustaining. He's doing everything he can to keep us from being in God's presence. And so it makes a lot of sense that before Jesus goes and does ministry, he has to deal with the source. He has to go to confront the root of the problem. That's why before he goes to ministry, what does Jesus do? He's led by the Spirit out into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. He's going out to confront Satan. The very same way that Adam and Eve first were tempted by the devil, now Jesus is going and doing the same thing. So what does Jesus do to prepare? He's going to prepare for this massive fight, this all-out battle between good and evil, right? Does Jesus even need to prepare? It's Jesus, right? Let's see. Verse 2, after fasting, repeat that. After fasting, everybody say it with me. After fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. It's like an understatement on the end there, but, right? I mean, after fasting for 40 days and 40 nights, just want to let you know, he didn't eat at night either, right? He didn't eat at all during these 40 days. He fasts, and not just any fast, 40 days. You thought 21 days was ridiculous. 40 days, Jesus fasts. And, it makes sense. Jesus is about to go head-to-head with Satan. It has to happen, right? It's needed. He has to confront Satan. But the next 40 days don't make sense to us. Before Jesus even gets close to the temptations of Satan, close to the fight, he fasts for 40 days, arguably making him the weakest possible he could be, right? In his flesh, the weakest. But what have we been talking about? What does fasting do? Right? Yeah. In the spirit, he was stronger than he's ever been. Was he hungry? Says he was, right? He was hungry. Was he strong? Do we think so, though? Is that how we think? You know the answer. Let's see. Jesus knew what seems like weakness on the outside was actually strengthening him in unseen ways. And by the time the devil appeared, Jesus was ready. Look at the first battle, Matthew 4, verse 3. The tempter came to him and said, if you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread. Satan's first temptation to Jesus is the appeal of escape. Right? When in the midst of pain and suffering, the flesh becomes the loudest voice. When you're suffering, when you're fasting, the flesh is going to become the loudest voice in your head. Just saying, I know you committed to this, but this is too hard. I know that, you thought it was going to make you stronger, but that's just not true. You feel this weakness so strongly that you want any way possible to get out. It's not just true of fasting, it's true of everything, right? Whenever you say no to your flesh, you encounter something. It's called being uncomfortable. There's a reason why it's very difficult to get out of an addiction. I heard this person talking about it. She said it's like you slowly are going into this dark cave whenever you say no to an addiction. And you'll do anything you can to pull you back out of that cave. So you keep going back to that thing that'll pull you out. Even though you know it's harming you, even though you know it's destroying you. But the being uncomfortable is so difficult that it's impossible for you to stay away from that addiction. And that's true of anything. It doesn't have to be a strong, very visible addiction. It's anytime we say no to our flesh, we feel uncomfortable. Your body and mind are used to getting whatever it wants immediately, right? That's what you want, immediate satisfaction. That's the name of our culture, right? It's our American motto, immediate satisfaction. And then you encounter God, and he calls you to change a few things in your life. Like watching pornography, you used to think it was okay, but now God's saying, no, that shouldn't be a normal part of your life, right? Or stop spending endless hours wasted in front of a screen. Oh, wait, God, but there's nothing wrong with that, But you're telling me to say no to my flesh, but I love spending hours scrolling on this thing. Or to spend time, God's calling you to spend time reading or listening to the Bible. That's really difficult, God. I got no time, okay? No time at all. Even though, I've seen every episode of that new show that just came out yesterday. Stayed up all night watching it. As soon as you experience this uncomfortableness, you search for anything to escape. And that's the exact temptation that Jesus is brought with. That's what Satan goes at. Temptation number 1, find satisfaction in the wrong place. You see, as soon as you attempt to follow Jesus with your life, this is the temptation that Satan is going to come at you with. Right? This temptation is going to come at you. As soon as you try to engage in this fast, this temptation is going to come at you. As soon as you try to get that thing out of your life that has been destroying your relationships, been destroying your stability, this temptation is going to come at you. I've seen it so many times, not just in my life, but you make up this huge plan to fast, but then an unexpected party comes up, this work party, and it's all free food. You're like, oh, but God, why didn't that come up like ever in my life before, Or you decide to commit spending time with Jesus every morning, time where you pray, and all of a sudden you just realize how much you love sleep, right? You just get up, your alarm goes off, and you're like, I'm just going to be really cranky today unless I sleep more. So, okay, God, I'll talk to you tomorrow. Or you decide to stop engaging in that addiction. You've had to alcohol, but you start filling it with a new addiction. Overeating, binge watching, whatever it is. It's a way to get out of the uncomfortableness. So many times we give up one addiction and fill it with another. It's the same temptation throughout the ages that Satan uses. He wants you to find satisfaction in anything but God. And that's what fasting forces us to do, is to find satisfaction in God alone. It strips away all the things that make us feel comfortable. Not eating, you don't feel comfortable. Just decreasing your calories is not going to make you feel comfortable. And all of a sudden, you're left with who you really are, right? It takes away that little comfort bubble. The real self comes out, and you don't really like it. You don't like it. Other people don't like it. You have to deal with it. So instead, we go to something else, right? Hey, take these stones, turn them into bread. Hey, sign back in to that account. Hey, go hang out with those people again. Hey, it's not going to hurt you one more time to do this. Same temptation. Jesus was tempted by the very same thing, but in the midst of 40 days of fasting, think about that, 40 days of fasting, Jesus felt the satisfaction of something else, of the Spirit of God. God's Spirit in such a way he knew nothing else could satisfy. He wasn't living on the flesh alone. No one else could go 40 days without food unless he was living on the Spirit. And as Jesus was fasting, he becomes stronger. And so he answers saying, "It is written, man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God." It's the exact opposite of that temptation. I am not going to find satisfaction somewhere else. I'm going to find satisfaction in God. The second battle, verse 5, then the devil took him to the holy city, that's Jerusalem, had him stand on the highest point of the temple. "If you are the Son of God," he said, "throw yourself down, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and they will lift you up in their hands, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone." So Satan's like, come on, Jesus, show everyone that you're God. Just throw yourself off of this. And literally, Satan quotes the Bible. Think about that. Satan knows the Bible better than most of us. Satan quotes the Bible. He says, hey, angels will catch you. You don't even have to worry. Let's just prove it to everyone. And the second temptation gets at our heart's desires to be above God. The very temptation that arguably destroyed Satan himself. He used to be an angel of God who wanted to be more than God, to decide for ourselves what is best. That's what this temptation is. To use God's words for our own means and methods. That was what Satan was doing, right? He was using a scripture for his own means and methods. You'll see how. To make our own will over God's. That's the temptation. My desires over God's desires. Satan manipulated the Bible for his own means, and that's the same temptation you and I have. It's something as simple as ignoring certain verses in the Bible. Right? We were just talking about this, right? Hey, if fasting doesn't apply to me, or, I know there's like adultery is in the Bible, but, it doesn't really apply to me because I'm unhappy. That's what we say. We suddenly cut out verses. Or choosing to change certain things subtly because of our culture. I know the Bible said that, but it's kind of outdated. So maybe what I feel is right. It can be something even as small as knowing what you should do and deciding you know better. Temptation number 2, to go above God, or better yet, to be God. That's the temptation. And even though Jesus is God, he was tempted to do something that was not in line with the Father. That's the temptation. He's telling him, throw yourself from this building and the angels will catch you. And Jesus is like, God is not wanting me to test him. The Father is not wanting me to throw myself from a building just to prove something to Satan. In the same way we're tempted by Satan to be God ourselves, to make our own decision, to decide what's best for me. And again, this temptation came against Jesus, who had been so fortified with the direction and calling of God the Father that he was now going on 40 plus days without food. 40 plus days in the wilderness without food. Fasting had not brought Jesus to weakness, but to strength. A strong reliance on the Father and his ways over his own. So Jesus said to Satan, it is also written, do not put the Lord your God to the test. The third and final battle, verse 8, again the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor. And he says, all this I will give you, he said, if you will bow down and worship me. The last temptation of Jesus, the last battle, goes against the growing spirit inside of us. The part that desires to see goodness happen. When you start to follow Jesus, you start to love the things that he loves. You start to care about the things that he cares about. You start to desire that his kingdom would come to earth. And so Satan comes in and he says, just do it your way. You can make good things happen. This is that phrase, the end justifies the means. Let me tell you, that's a lie from Satan. The end never justifies the means. God's way is not accomplished through sin. But Satan's temptation is, no. If you just compromise a little bit here, something really good will happen in your life. That's the temptation. It's a lie that's so hard for our brains to distinguish because it's so complex. We see something good, but we see a compromise to get there. And the only way to discern it is by spending daily time with Jesus. That's the only way you can actually discern the truth, the reality. Temptation number 3, achieve something good the wrong way. Achieve something good the wrong way. You see, the reason this temptation was actually so strong is because Satan does have earthly power. If you read throughout the scriptures, you see that Jesus even says that Satan has a kingdom here on earth. It's called the kingdom of earth. It's constantly in battle with the kingdom of heaven. And Satan has authority for a time over this earth. And Jesus has come to earth to destroy that kingdom, to destroy its power over you and me. So what Satan is tempting Jesus with is exactly what he has come to do. He's saying, I'll give you everything you came for. All you have to do is bow down to me. Jesus is like, oh man, I don't have to go die on the cross. All I have to do is bow down and I get everything. You see the compromise? You think, oh, it's so obvious. Well, it happens every day in you in my life. We see something that we want. And Satan comes in and says, oh, I can give that to you. All you have to do is compromise this little thing. Just, don't tell anybody, but cheat a little bit here on your relationship or maybe even on your taxes. Just cheat a little bit, but don't worry, in the end, it's going to work out and you're going to get the blessing. God knows you need this. It's okay. You can take it because you deserve it. It's, justifying in your head all the different reasons why you deserve it. And so you do it the wrong way to get something good that maybe God was not going to give you. Maybe he was in the right time, but you do it in your own way. And you achieve something good the wrong way. Jesus had spent 40 days strengthening his flesh and spirit by fasting in order to follow the Father. And so when the temptation comes, You see Jesus not only turn away from this temptation now, but also right before the cross. Again, Jesus is tempted. Jesus says, "Away from me, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve him only." You know, if you've ever read this story before or heard this story, we think Satan came at Jesus because he was weak. I thought so for a long time. You read this and you're like, oh man, there's Satan. Sees Jesus at his weakest, comes at him, 40 days of fasting. Man, he's so sneaky. But what if it's flipped? What if Jesus knew, because what did it say? The Spirit led him into the wilderness to be tempted by Satan. What if Jesus knew he was about to go head-to-head with Satan, and so he needed to be at his strongest? What if we flip that narrative, right? It was actually the opposite. What if those three temptations, which are arguably the three temptations we are faced with in most of our lives, in every situation, is what Jesus had to go head-to-head with and say no to in his flesh. So after 40 days of fasting and prayer, Jesus was the strongest and most capable to face the devil. How about you and me? When the devil comes at you with your temptation, with your addiction, with your brokenness, what does the next 21 days look like for you? If fasting is supposed to be a part of your life, if you're following Jesus, what does it mean for you to try to beat that addiction? To become stronger to actually get it out of your life? Is there brokenness in your family that you really need a real move of God in order to heal? Is there emptiness in your life that you've never found healing for and purpose and meaning? I don't know, but God knows what is happening, and I know how God works. I know he's speaking to you. So I want to challenge you to engage in the fast, to not let it just go by, to not say, maybe next year, maybe another time. I really believe it's not an accident that you're here. That the Holy Spirit, same way he led Jesus into the wilderness, he said, hey, get up on the first Sunday of 2024 and go to church service. You get here and you're like, okay, I'm here. And then he's like, we're talking about fasting. You're like, oh my word, right? Jesus, I think, has led you here, and he knows you need a breakthrough in your life. He knows that thing that's been holding you. He knows that distance that you've been feeling between yourself and God. I really believe that God wants to use these next 21 days to bring healing to us, to bring breakthroughs to us, to bring purpose and a new level of satisfaction in God alone in your life. So as we close, I want you, if you want to remember, you want to pass out those pens. In the middle of that little booklet you got, there's a little commitment card. We're going to give you each a pen, and we're going to give you a couple minutes to just look at this. And again,